You have probably heard this headline by now. In 2027, the EU is forcing phone companies to bring back removable batteries. Like the old days, pop off the back, swap the battery, and your phone gets a second life. It sounds incredibly satisfying. Except it's not quite true. The EU isn't just fighting glued batteries, it is fighting something much bigger. A world where your device is technically repairable, but practically locked shut by design, by software, or by both. And the most surprising fact, for me at least, is that the most expensive phones may comply with these new rules without looking any more repairable at all. To understand why, we need to start with the one part of your phone that is guaranteed to die first. The battery is a ticking clock. Your screen, cameras, and processor might be completely fine after 3 years, but an aging battery changes the whole experience. The phone dies by noon, it runs hot, and performance gets glitchy. Slowly, a perfectly good device starts to feel like trash. That is why battery replacement matters. It's not about nostalgia for chunky plastic phones from 2010. It's because a worn battery is usually the only thing standing between keeping your phone and buying a new one. But modern flagships make that choice miserable. The battery is buried under an active minefield of industrial adhesive, tiny screws, and fragile ribbon cables. Opening it requires heat guns, suction cups, and a prayer that you don't puncture the lithium cell. And even if you survive the physical repair, the digital nightmare begins. This is where parts pairing comes in. On modern devices, parts are digitally serialized to a specific motherboard. If you swap in a fresh battery without the manufacturer's proprietary calibration software, your phone throws an error message warning you that your battery data is restricted. It turns a physical fix into a digital lock. We saw the spark of this tension with Apple's infamous battery gate, where the company quietly choked the performance of older iPhones to cover up degrading batteries, resulting in a $113 million settlement in the US. But Batterygate was just the first ghost haunting this new law. The software lock was the second, and that is why the EU's new framework isn't just about eliminating glue. It's about a much bigger question. Who controls your device after you've already paid for it? The headline rule comes from the EU battery regulation, hitting the calendar on February 18, 2027. It dictates that portable batteries must be readily removable and replaceable by the end user. In plain English, you should be able to swap it out using standard, commercially available tools without risking a kitchen fire. No proprietary screwdrivers, no toxic solvents, and no heat guns allowed, unless the company ships them to you for free. Plus, spare batteries must remain available for 5 years after a product is discontinued. For wireless speakers, smart trackers, e-readers, and earbuds, devices that routinely become landfill the second a tiny battery dies, this is a massive victory. But smartphones are a different beast entirely because they don't just sit under the battery law. They are governed by a hidden, second layer called the Ecodesign regulation. This is the rule the headlines completely skipped. Operating quietly behind the scenes, this law demands that phone makers supply replacement parts and schematics for 7 years. Crucially, it targets parts pairing directly. If a company uses digitally linked components, they are legally forced to give independent repair shops access to the software tools needed to authorize the fix. The simple version? The EU is saying, don't make the battery physically replaceable and then use software locks to make the repair feel broken. But that exact same phone rule also creates the ultimate twist. For smartphones, the EU does not actually require a battery that you can snap out with your thumbnail. It provides a legal loophole, a professional repair pathway. A manufacturer can keep their phone completely sealed and restrict batteries to repair shops if they clear a brutal engineering fitness test. First, after 500 full charge cycles, the battery must still hold at least 83% capacity. Second, after 1,000 cycles, it must retain at least 80%. And third, the device has to be heavily sealed against the elements with at least an IP67 dust and water resistance rating. That changes everything. It means the law doesn't force tech giants to rethink their designs. It just gives them 2 paths. Path A, make the phone easy for an amateur to open. Path B, build a battery so durable and a body so waterproof that the EU allows it to stay in professional hands. So no, the premium flagship phone with a pop-off plastic back isn't coming back. The real future is a quiet compromise. Phones that stay completely sealed, but carry batteries that last longer, parts that stay available for a decade, and software that is legally banned from breaking your third-party repairs. Now, look at Apple through that lens. For the iPhone 14 and earlier, Apple rated their batteries to hit 80% capacity after 500 cycles. But for the iPhone 15 and later, they quietly doubled that claim to 1,000 cycles. Combined with their IP68 water resistance, Apple cleared the EU's high hurdles without changing a single piece of aluminum on the outside of the phone. For premium phone makers, this is the obvious play. The strategy isn't to bring back the plastic battery door, it's to make the battery just durable enough to keep the phone glued shut. For consumers, it's a bittersweet compromise. You won't be swapping your battery at the kitchen table in 30 seconds. You will still pay for labor and you will still book an appointment. But the company will have fewer ways to make that repair unavailable, overpriced, or digitally broken.
Shit.
This law isn't forcing a return to the past. It's forcing a fight over who controls the future of the phone you already bought. And this is where the story gets bigger than your iPhone. The EU isn't just thinking about repair. They are thinking about a world resource war. Inside every battery is a cocktail of strategically vital materials: lithium, cobalt, nickel, and copper. When a cheap gadget gets tossed in the trash because its battery died, those raw materials vanish. But if that battery is easy to separate, it stops being electronic waste and becomes a domestic mine. That is why this regulation mandates aggressive recycling targets. By 2031, recyclers must recover 95% of cobalt, copper, and nickel, and 80% of lithium from old batteries. Make no mistake, this is industrial warfare disguised as environmental policy. China currently dominates the global battery supply chain. For Europe, extracting minerals from recycled trash isn't just about being green. It's about survival. A battery that is easy to remove is easy to fix, but more importantly, it is easy to reclaim. Your dead phone battery isn't just trash anymore. It's a tiny, high-stakes asset in a global resource chess match. So, what should you expect by 2027? Not one future, but three. First, a lot of small electronics will become genuinely easier to fix. The products that were basically disposable because of one dead battery may have to change the most. Second, mid-range and budget phones may actually become easier to open, especially if they can't afford the engineering needed to hit those high durability targets. And third, premium flagships will likely look exactly the same. They'll still be sealed, water-resistant, and difficult to repair at home. But they will arrive with longer battery life claims, 7 years of spare parts, and software that's legally required to accept your repairs. The real question isn't, will my next phone have a removable battery? The better question is, when the battery eventually dies, can I replace it affordably and safely, without the software punishing me for it? Because if the answer is no, then the law has failed, even if the company technically followed it. The EU battery law is a start, but it's not the magic wand everyone thinks it is. The real victory isn't a plastic back that pops off. It's a system where the repair is actually allowed to work. If you like this one, I think you will enjoy this video. Or maybe this one, which is suggested by YouTube.